Everyone. So yesterday on Tisha B'Av, as the fast day continued deep into the evening, I engaged in a time-honored modern tradition of this Memorial Day, watching a terribly depressing movie. Having just helped move my friend and colleague, Rabbi Kaplan, across the country, Rabbi Kaplan suggested a movie that I had heard about but never watched, called Beautiful Boy. Named after one of my favorite John Lennon songs written about his son, Sean, I thought, this movie can't be so sad with such a song as its title. I was wrong. Very, very wrong. Based on a true story, the movie chronicles the relationship between a father and son and follows as the son, played by Timothy Chalamet, falls deeper and deeper into dangerous drug addiction. His father, played by Steve Carell, navigates his fear, disappointment, and utter despair as he watches his beautiful boy become addicted, get help, and then relapse again and again. In trying to understand his son's condition and hopefully help him through it, he interviews a drug scientist who explains to him how terribly addictive and dangerous the taking of methamphetamines is. It begins with the first intense high, but it quickly dulls, leaving the user to continually and unsuccessfully chase that first feeling of euphoria. He tells the father that the treatment success rate for getting off meth is much lower than some have told him, only about 6 to 8%. And so the movie grinds on with moments of hope, dashed with terrible relapses, and then even more terrible consequences for the son and his suffering parents and family. And yet, in the end, we are left, thankfully, with some hope, as the son finally returns to treatment after his extended disappearance. The movie ends with a single shot of father and son sitting in the courtyard of the treatment center, the son breaking down in tears while his father silently comforts him. We find out in the last title that after a serious, difficult process, the son had managed to maintain his sobriety for 8 years, up until the movie was released. While not to say that he continued, I think he's continuing on, but it was 8 years by the time the movie was released. So while it's not an exact parallel with thinking about the destruction of the temples, watching this film on Tisha B'Av pointed out to me how dangerous drugs serve to lead to a destruction of a family, not to mention the destruction of the temple of our bodies that God has given us. It also pointed to the difficulty of the rebuilding process of life following such destruction. But beyond it all, it left me with a much deeper understanding of and a compassion for the near superhuman struggle to fight off addiction. It's not simply a matter of willpower, but of continuous vigilance, requiring support systems of many different types. And even with all the professional help in the world, this may not suffice to hold a person back from relapsing. While this is certainly true for the battle to stay sober when addicted to serious drugs, each of us faces struggles of addiction, often on a much less intense scale, but which are habits that are nonetheless incredibly difficult to break. Whether it be addictions to social media, to alcohol, nicotine, or even insomnia, we're not always as in control of our willpower as we would like to think. Our brains become literally wired to look out for the next fix. I mention this today on Shabbat, not to depress us as we come out of the sadness on Tisha B'Av, but because this film shone a new light for me on the way that Moses speaks to the people Israel in the book of Deuteronomy. Now, if you've been paying attention to at least the last 3 books of the Torah, It won't be a surprise to know that the people, Israel, have screwed up quite a lot when it comes to following the dictates of God. Time and time again, they have fallen into the same patterns, lacking faith, demanding a return to Egypt, creating and worshiping idols and foreign gods, defying the laws of Shabbat, blaspheming God in the Promised Land, rebelling against the authority of Moses and Aaron. It has not been an easy, linear journey, to say the least. But after watching this film, I gained more compassion for all of their mistakes, seeing them in the light of real addiction and a return to old habits. Leading people who were enslaved for centuries on this journey, so unlike their past experiences, is in some ways like trying to help an addict out of their habit. It's to be expected that the people will relapse, not a shock at all. Moses and God are trying to do the impossible, and they come to learn how difficult the task really is. They come to learn that it is not something that can even be accomplished in one generation. In a certain sense, the generation doomed to wander and die in the wilderness reflects God seeing the odds of recovery in the single digits and essentially giving up on this generation utterly addicted to Egypt. But with the departure of this past generation, the draw of Egypt, of rebellion and idolatry do not disappear. And that leads us to our Parsha, Ved Hanan. In the introduction to the restatement of the laws of the Torah for this new generation, Moses' prognosis for the people's success going into the land is bleak. He in fact says with near certainty that when you'll produce children and grandchildren and will have been in the land for a long time, then you'll be corrupt and make a statue of any form and do what is bad in the eyes of the Eternal. And you'll perish quickly from the land to which you're crossing the Jordan to take possession of it. For Moses, it's almost inevitable in his mind that the people will return to idolatry once they settle down comfortably. The comfort and stability itself will be the cause of their relapse. A few verses before Moses implores the people to watch yourselves in case you'll forget the covenant of Adonai your God. In other words, the addiction to straying to other gods may diminish at times, but it is only eternal watchfulness that gives them a fighting chance. But they will very likely fall off the wagon, and the results will be disastrous. Exile, near destruction as a people. As a sign from a group meeting scene in the film said, when it comes to addiction, a person must recognize, I can't cure it. All they can do is to keep fighting, keep being supported, and feel and remember the painful consequences of the relapse when they come. It's a bleak message, perhaps, but it's a realistic one that Moses places before this new generation. And yet, much like the end of the film, there's still hope for the people of Israel. Even though they will almost certainly fail at times, there is a path back. Moses tells them, if you seek out Adonai, your God, from your exile, then you'll find him. When you seek him with all your heart and all your soul, if you'll return, he won't let you down and he won't destroy you, because Adonai, your God, is a merciful God. In other words, when you feel the consequences that come from a relapse into old habits, there is an opening for you to seek out God, to seek out the holy person you want to be, and God will forgive you. There's a way home. However narrow, however difficult, if you put your whole self and effort into this teshuvah, this seeking of God, this listening to what is right and returning, God will be there waiting. Now, Moses could have started this final epic speech to the people, turning over a new leaf. He could have ignored the mistakes of their parents' past and assumed that things would go well this time. But that would have been dishonest, unrealistic. After 40 years in the wilderness, Moses is not naive about the difficulties even this new generation will encounter. They are not immune to their parents' challenges, even when they have departed. The addiction, the urge to stray is still there, not simply because their parents succumbed to it, but because addiction itself is a real struggle of being human. Moses knows he would have been irresponsible to deny the reality of the challenges the people will face going forward, but he also offers a path to a remedy, the seeking of God, the remembering of the wonders that God did for them and their parents, the returning to the way of life that benefits them, even with all of its challenges. We are all addicts to something. We're creatures of habit. As we begin the path back to God in the coming season of repentance, we cannot deny the serious challenge of what we are attempting, the likelihood of its future failures. And yet, we still must focus on that path back. We must remember the ways that our addictive actions cause us and others such pain, and start the process again of vigilance against falling into that trap. If we really engage in this work, we must remember that God will be there and forgive us, even when we can't always forgive ourselves. God, like a parent, just wants us to come home. Shabbat shalom.